A leaked audio recording of a March 26 United Nations agency's meeting was released by the non-profit Omna Tigray on August 14, 2021, citing anonymous sources from a UN meeting held in Ethiopia, to discuss allegations of sexual violence in the Tigray conflict. The meeting was prompted by a need for the United Nations country offices to align on a unified position regarding the allegations of sexual violence. The discussions included problems related to the media, in terms of how the media is sensationalizing the situation, and even spreading misinformation. The UN agency representatives who attended the meeting discussed the challenge they are having with the lack of evidence and lack of data, which has made it difficult for them to validate anecdotal evidence. The meeting was held via video conference with UN and country team members, UN agency representatives and partners. The meeting was led by Maureen Aching, International Organization for Migration, IOM Chief of Mission to Ethiopia and representative to the African Union, United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, UNECA, and the Intergovernmental Authority on Development. Attendees included Letty Chawara, UN Women Representative to Ethiopia, African Union and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, ECA, Denia Gale, United National Population Fund, NFPA, Country Representative to Ethiopia. Dr. Kwesi Sandskulot Greenidge, Peace and Development Advisor at United Nations Development Program. Charles D. Mkwemoy, Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights Officer. Alexio Muzindo, Director of the International Labour Organization Country Office for Ethiopia, Djibouti, Somalia, Sudan, and South Sudan. And for the Special Representative to the African Union and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. The following is the full audio recording with transcription. Thank you for watching.
We would all have seen the IASC principal statements on this. UN Women and UNFPA are working very hard on trying to ensure that some of the work we're doing, even if not directly geared towards combating the incidence or mitigating the incidence of sexual violence, could help to contribute or to mitigate the incidence of it. We know that UN Women and UNFPA are both part of the Early Recovery Initiative, and some of the actions proposed under Early Recovery will help to, if implemented, will help to mitigate the incidence of sexual violence acts that are being perpetrated. Important to note is that we don't really have verified information. Clearly something is happening, but in terms of data, statistics, a lot of it remains anecdotal. Hence the importance of also getting OHCHR. I don't know whether they're on the call to eventually feed back information to us based on the assessments that they will be carrying out jointly with the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. So I'll invite Letty and Denia of UNFPA to give a brief on that. I know Denia is held up at another meeting and might be joining in if she hasn't already, but Letty for sure is online. So Letty, perhaps we start with you.
Thank you very much, Maureen, and good morning, colleagues. I think you have actually articulated the objective of this conversation. It was really for me and Denia to bring to the attention of the UNCT that there has been this global attention to the supposed escalating cases of sexual violence and rape being perpetrated against women and girls, and in some instances also media hype, I could call it, around rape being used as a weapon of war, which we know sometimes is true, sometimes is not true. You take it with a pinch of salt, but there is always some element of truth in sometimes the things that we read out of the media, but we can't take it all as is. Having said so, it's definitely clear, based on the principles of the ISEC agencies, which are 11 agencies, we have recently issued that statement, which we shared with all of you. Also, those acts in accountability. of those who are perpetrating those allegations. So definitely it's an element of truth, even if we don't have data, but anecdotal evidence tells us it's true, it's happening. We are also hearing, particularly as the CSOs who are providing a one-stop service center for survivors of violence, some of the horrific incidents.
Letty, you're coming in and out. You're breaking up a lot. Letty, you're breaking up a lot. You're coming in and out.
Okay. I'm trying to. Let me remove video. Hello?
Okay.
I hope it will be better now.
Yes, we hear you better for now. Go ahead.
Okay, I removed video to make it better. So that said, I think the objective of this, bringing this to the UNCT, is twofold. One is how do we, as a UNCT, also have our own common position around what's happening to women and girls in Tigray, building on what our ISAC principles have already written as a statement. If we were to be asked as a member of the UNCT or a country team or EHCT, if we were to be asked by either media or government or anybody around how to respond to this, what do we say? So I think it's how do we come up with a common position and common statement to allow us to respond in a uniform way. So that's number one. Number two is to also look at what are some of the programmatic actions that not only NPA and UN Women are doing on the ground, which includes, of course, the work we are doing under the Prevention of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse, but also other programmatic actions we are doing on providing services to survivors. What else is being done which could actually help to reduce the risk of women and girls being raped or being exposed to potential rape? So I think that could also help us as a UNCT to be able to say, you know what?
Sorry, Charles, could you mute yourself? Charles? Sorry, Letty, go ahead.
So I think in conclusion, what I wanted to share, I don't want to go into all the details of what we are doing because I think we don't have much time for that, but we are doing a lot of work. But I want to say in conclusion that what like this conversation to help us to as a one UN. Secondly, what are some of the actions we are doing on the that could help to ensure that women and girls are protected from violence, and of course they have the services they need if they are raped. Those are the two areas of conversations that I would expect to get guidance and support from the colleagues to help me and Dania to move forward with pulling together a strategy and a messaging for the.
Thank you very much, Letty, for that introduction. I don't know whether we have Dania on the line. Dania?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Yes, we hear you now.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I think it's just, for me, brief also, just to add to what Letty said. I think that the importance of this consolidated messaging from the UNCT, because I'm sure many of you, after the statement have gone out from our principal, have received requests for media interviews or questions from journalists around this issue, and I personally am receiving quite a bit of them, and most of them are very, the sensationalist kind of questioning, and I think we want to have a clear messaging, and we also want to add what work has been done on this, so that we move it around away, the conversation away from being, how many women, what kind of violence, and we speak to the work that has been done, as Letty rightly said. So I am particularly interested in hearing from our colleagues, how can we put that kind of collective message together so that we also have a position as a UNCT in Ethiopia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dania. The floor is open for comments, inputs, suggestions. I don't see any requests for the floor yet, so perhaps I'll just add that perhaps we would, to help guide the deliberation, maybe UN Women and UNFPA could put together a one-pager that we review amongst ourselves and endorse as the agreed lines to take on this. That might help the discussion as opposed to starting from a completely blank slate. I see a request from Charles. Charles, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Maureen. I had actually opened, tried to open my mic to speak, and then I forgot when you reminded me. I just speaking on behalf of OHCHR, I think what is clear, obviously, some of you may have seen that we released a press statement jointly with the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission announcing the commencement of the joint investigation. We are still dealing with the logistical aspects because it appears to be a very complex investigation. Clearly, in the plan that we have developed, sexual violence is being prioritized as one of them. And I think that in our engagements with UN Women and the relevant agencies, we need to agree on what are the key aspects that we need to focus. There is also an interest from SRSG pattern of conflict-related sexual violence to provide specialized training for the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission in the short run to prepare them for that kind of investigation. So I think, yes, clearly we need a common messaging. We are also being bombarded a lot with a lot of questions from the media. And as you can imagine, in most of these questions, sexual violence will not miss. It's almost everywhere. We have remained general because we don't really have very concrete facts to stand on. And I think that that one pager will be interesting for us to feed into it so that we have a common messaging for the UNCT, because these questions will continue to linger for a while. Over.
Thank you very much for that, Charles, and I really hope that we can have OHCHR really support UNFPA and UN Women on this. I see Turhan and then Kwesi. Over to you, Turhan.
Thank you very much, Maureen. I actually wanted to underline the point that you made because it's a very important one, which is that the recovery work that we're doing right now at the UN as a group, it would be a very good follow-up, also complementing the work that UNOHCHR is doing, very important work, to actually as a UN, using the statement as a background and in a sense a mandate also, to really push in the recovery planning process action, serious action, on the issue of SGBV. I think this is a great opportunity and we are in a good place to do it as a team. Thank you.
Thank you, Turhan. Kwesi.
Hi, thanks. Just a couple of questions for clarification and just so that we have a shared understanding of how we go forward on this incredibly serious issue. We've seen statements from the Secretary General, from his spokesperson, from the Special Advisor on the Prevention of Sexual Violence during Conflict, from the Special Advisor on Prevention of the right responsibility to protect, as well as the prevention of genocide, all of which have said that they are credible reports of large-scale sexual violence taking place in Tigray. But in the introduction to this, the kind of framing of it was that these hadn't been verified. How do we go from not verified to credible? I don't think it's a physical examination of these women's bodies. So how do we do that as the UN? When do we move from it being that? The second is if perhaps Maureen and Letty could say a bit more about the term that they used around media sensationalization of the rape cases. How does that fit into this, our positioning as the UN, and what exactly is meant by that, the media sensationalization? Because I'm not following how that fits into this discussion exactly. Thanks.
Thank you, Kwesi. Turhan, is that an old hand? I believe it is.
It is an old hand. For some reason, I can't get it down.
All right. Letty and Dania, do you want to come in?
Maureen, Alexio, before it.
Sorry, Alexio, I can't see your hand. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, I liked Leto's suggestion for a one-pager, frequently asked questions that can help us. But I thought if we have that very specific on the violence against women, but could also be worth thinking to have another frequently asked questions on the whole Tigray issue in general, so that we have sort of common answers as UNCT when we meet with partners. Over.
Thank you, Alexio. Great suggestion. I think the second one will be a much tougher to reach agreement on, but I fully agree with you. It would help for us to have something of a common position. But I'll ask Letty and Dania to come in. I'm also happy to add in response to Kwesi's question. Over to you, Letty. Perhaps, Dania, you can come in if Letty is having connectivity challenges. Okay, there you go, Letty. Go ahead.
I'm in. Thank you very much, colleagues, for all your comments and questions. I think the questions are mainly from Kwesi, but I'll frame those responses to Kwesi based on what Alexio has just said. A very good idea for us to have frequently asked questions, and therefore our responses therefore. And to that effect, request those colleagues who have been particularly, we have had questions or requests from media or from other partners on this issue to share with us what were those questions, so that it can help me and Dania and our teams to look at how do we begin to respond to some of those questions, and of course we will add others. So I heard some colleagues saying they've already been receiving questions from media on that, and I think that would help us to prepare the one-pager with frequently asked questions. And I appreciate, Alexio, your suggestion for framing the whole one-pager in the form of a frequently asked question. And going backwards to what Kwesi said, one of the frequently asked questions will be, how many women have been raped? Or is it true that women have been raped? And so how do you respond as a UN agency to that question? And again, it goes to the question that Kwesi was raising, that our principles at some level are saying there's verified evidence. And then media would ask us, where is the source of the evidence and what is the evidence? So, and I think we really need to be super careful unless we have the verified evidence to be able to say, yes, there is real data or evidence of this happening to so many women and in this context. And I think up until such a time when OHCR and the Commission for Human Rights have finished their investigations, I would not feel comfortable as a UN entity or as the whole UN for us within Ethiopia to begin to say we have evidence, because we don't in our hands. And something that has been done jointly with a recognized entity within government, which is of course the Office of the Human Rights Commission, the Commission for Human Rights for Ethiopia. And indeed, I've had conversations with OHCR as they begin to plan this investigation jointly with government, and we have already started to look at how do we ensure that the sexual violence element of that investigation on broader human rights violations is actually going to be very strong and is going to actually give us the evidence we need. So I think that's a conversation I'm even now escalating to my headquarters for support, for tools, for methodologies and all that have been used globally to ensure we get the data we need. Noting for sure that, as Charles said, this is a very difficult area to investigate. So specialized training is required. Specialized tools are required. Sensitivity is required, even dealing with the women and the girls, asking them questions. So it's not just like a census where you go and ask how many people live in this house. It's really very sensitive, this issue. So therefore, Kwesi, personally, I would want to continue to lean on accepting that, yes, these things are happening on the ground, but we are working on anecdotal evidence. I don't think we have credible data to actually give in our Q&A to say we know that so many women have been raped in this context and what have you, because so far we don't have, until HCR goes on the ground and produces their report, which of course will need to be presented to government and verified and approved and cleared before we can even refer to it. You know the whole procedure and the sensitivity with the government. So that's how I would respond to Kwesi's question, but I don't know if Dania wants to add to that. Over to you, Maureen.
Just before
that, can we have Dania come in first? Kwesi, could we have Dania come in first? Over to you, Dania.
Yes, thank you very much. And maybe for clarification, when I use the terminology of sensationalism, in the past 2 days, I have woken up to messages from journalists threatening UNFPA that they're going to go out with a report on how safe houses that are supported by UNFPA, where we protect women and girls that have been victims of sexual violence, have been raided by armed forces in Ethiopia. And that if I did not come back and explain to them the evidence, like Letty rightly said, that they were going to go out with this story. And I was like, well, go out with your stories. I don't say how not been raided by anyone. We know where they are. We are protecting these women's safety by not disclosing anything about these houses. So again, this idea of
go ahead, Dania.
Is to something permanent. Okay. Oh, no, finish over.
Okay, we lost a little bit of what you had to say at the end, but I think we got the gist of it. Kwesi, you wanted to come in again? Okay, I think we may have lost Kwesi. Kwesi, did you want to come in again?
I'm back, yes. Unfortunately, my internet dropped and I missed everything Dania said, so I apologize if my follow-up questions have already been answered. I worry that there is a lot of reinvention of the wheel when it comes to the Tigray crisis. Having worked jointly with the UN and others on investigations of sexual violence, mass rapes during Darfur, having built on the work that the UN had done in Bosnia and Herzegovina, I think it is odd that the procedure is that we do not accept reports as credible unless the investigation is verified by government or done in partnership with government, both in Darfur as well as in Bosnia and in Sri Lanka for that matter. The UN has done investigations on sexual violence during conflict that had been done, if not independent of these national bodies, or had been done with our own investigations that were then submitted to these national bodies. Whether they accept it or not is a different thing because they're a conflict party. It's not expected that they will jump on a report on sexual violence that we do. I think we're conflating two very different issues here. One is our public positioning to the media as a UN country team around delicate questions on sexual violence. And second is being in line with what our SG, our special representative on sexual violence during conflict, our special representative on the prevention of genocide, our special representative on the responsibility to protect, and the High Commissioner of OHCHR have already said on the use of sexual violence during this conflict. It would be strange for the UN country team to be out of step with that, or saying something quite different to what's being said by our principals all the way up to the SG level. This is why I'm repeating the same questions over, just to understand whether we are saying that what is coming from HQ on this is different to what we believe is happening. Is that our official position as the UN country team? And the need to separate what we say to the media from what is actually the consolidated position of the whole UN country team and HQ. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Kwesi. I'm not sure that there is a dissonance between what the principals put out and what the position as articulated by Letty and Denya is.